Hi there, and welcome to another live event. This is the Paperback celebration, the launch of the paperback of my book, The Whispers of War. We're going to go ahead and get started here in just one moment. We've got a lot going on, so I want to make sure that I have plenty of time for that. But I also want to make sure that people who are looking from my Facebook page can go ahead and find this as well. So give me 1 second here while I share this around. We're going to make sure that everybody is happy, everybody knows where this video exists, and then I'll be able to go ahead and get started here. So I hope everybody's enjoying their Tuesday. I'm here, of course, in the UK, as I talk about sometimes, and that means that I'm in the middle of my late afternoon, end of afternoon, so I'm able to sort of take a look back at the day, unlike I suspect many of my US and Canadian readers who will be joining us. But let me just get this shared right now, and then we will get underway. Wonderful. All right. Hopefully that's worked. If not, sometimes we end up needing to do some troubleshooting here. It's one of the joys of Facebook. Things move around, things change, but fortunately, we will go ahead and be able to keep pushing along. So this is very exciting. I love a book launch because it's a time to sort of sit back, reflect a bit on what writing the book was like, which is always, by the time we get to a book launch and by the time we get to a paperback book launch, when the book has been in hardcover, it's this really strange thing where you feel like you've been living with this book for so long. There's just no way that you can possibly figure out how to even summarize what it was like going through it, because publishing takes a long time and it takes some time for books to go through the process. So, but this is going to be a fun one to talk about because I really, really ended up enjoying the process of The Whispers of War. It was not the easiest book to write. I'll be very upfront about that, and I've been very upfront about that in the past with various events. But the great thing about this book was it was a real labor of love, and so I absolutely love talking about it. I think it's an absolutely fascinating time period. Hopefully you will agree with me and you will find this book just as interesting and the research as interesting as I did. But I just want to go ahead and set out a little bit of an agenda for us here today. So there are a few things that you can expect from this. So first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about The Whispers of War. I'm also going to do a reading from the book as well. I thought I would change things up a little bit and do something a little different from what I normally do for a reading, a different passage, something that maybe you guys haven't seen. So I will give the caveat that I have a very, very talented audiobook narrator for this book. I am not an audiobook narrator. I am not an actor, so I'm going to do my best as the author of the book to go ahead and read it to you, but we'll go ahead and do that reading, and then there will be a live Q&A, so you can go ahead and ask any questions that you might want to go ahead and know the answers to, whether that is about the writing process, about research, about sort of different themes in my books, or always popular, just what it's like being an American expat living in London. That one tends to come up quite a lot. So this book does have a bit of an expat theme to it. So please do go ahead and let me know if you have any particular questions that you want to know the answers to, and I will do my very best to try to make sure that it's a thing that you'll be able to get a lot out of. And then, very exciting, after the Q&A is done, I'm going to talk about a book giveaway that I'm doing. There are a couple of signed copies of The Whispers of War that will be up for grabs. Those will be up for grabs for people who are commenting and asking questions, both in this live video and then also when it goes through and does and is archived. I'll be able to go ahead and share that with you guys, share that to my page, share that with my newsletter. We'll get people a chance to go ahead and watch the video, because I know not every time zone works for every person. Living in a country where you are a little ways away from your home base of people, Oh, there are bubbles floating outside my window. This is also the wonders of live video. But living away from the country where your primary reader base is based means that it is a little bit tricky sometimes to fit in timings and figure out when works best for people. So I'm still doing some experimentation, still figuring out when it's going to be the best time for people to join these types of things. So bear with me on that, but we will have a book giveaway, and then also I've got some more information about the next event that I'm going to be doing, which I'm really excited about. I really think that you guys are going to have a lot of fun on that one, and I really cannot wait. I think it's going to be really fantastic. So please go ahead and leave your comments. Let me know if you have questions specific to the book, if there's just things that you want to know about The Whispers of War, or if you just want to check in and say hello, leave a recommendation of what you're reading right now. I always love hearing what you guys are reading because you have such fantastic taste in fiction and such a diverse group of books also across a lot of different genres, a lot of different authors, a lot of different subjects. So I'm really always looking forward to adding things to my list. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my little agenda here pulled up so that I know that I can keep myself on track, because I'm sure, based on previous experience, you guys know that we tend to ramble a little bit otherwise, unless we keep close attention. So it looks like here today I'm unfortunately not getting the comments on the sidebar, so I'm going to be doing some looking back and forth here because we are getting some comments in. I see people from Georgia and Oxfordshire and also Virginia on here, so keep commenting and I will go ahead and keep an eye on those comments and keep an eye on those questions. So, The Whispers of War, the book of the hour. So this book released in January, but again, this is the paperback edition that's just come out. You may have seen it looking a bit like this. So a different cover and a different treatment. If you guys want to hear about why different things get different treatments, go ahead and let me know. I would love to answer some questions about that if you guys are interested. But The Whispers of War, just to give you a bit of a brief summary of it, this book really came out of me becoming really interested in writing about things that people don't necessarily always know about or always acknowledge in history. And so I'm always looking for those little stories that are kind of hidden or little known. So I think those are the most interesting, and I think that that is really where you get some of the richest stories. So in this case, I became interested in the internment of German and Italian people, German, Austrian, and Italian people in the UK during World War II, and what that might mean for a German-born woman who spent the majority of her adult life in the UK, what that might mean for her as her experience living here goes from being a very positive one. This is her home, this is where she's, grown up, she went to boarding school, she has her friends here, to suddenly feeling like this is not a place where she's welcome, and this is not a place where she's necessarily safe. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea behind this book. So in this book, you meet Marie, who is our German expat, and then you meet Nora and you meet Hazel as well. Nora and Hazel are her best friends. They all went to boarding school together. They were all somewhat, little bit outcasts, and they really formed this bond and just had this unbreakable friendship their entire lives. And then as they've become, young working women, Hazel's married, but the other two are not. Hazel is a matchmaker in a matchmaking agency that's actually based on an actual matchmaking agency that operated during the 30s and during the war. Nora works for the home office and is in one of the departments there. And then Marie is a secretary for a department at a university, a German department of a university. So they all have their own careers, they all have things that are going on in their lives, and then the war comes in and changes all of that. Marie suddenly is declared an enemy alien, and she needs to figure out how to navigate what's basically changing social attitudes about, whether she and her family here in the UK, her aunt and uncle and her cousin, whether they should even be allowed to be here in the UK. So they go through a tribunal process, which is based on actual process that every single person had to be assessed whether they were or were not a threat to the British people and the British government, and then they also were categorized into different categories. And Marie is placed into a certain category that puts a little bit of pressure and concern and tension on her. And suddenly her friends realize that Marie's life could change very quickly, especially as the war marches on and things become more and more tense during this period of time. So everybody has to ask themselves, what is it that they're willing to sacrifice in order to keep Marie free and out of an internment camp? So that is The Whispers of War. And having done that little bit of an introduction, I'm going to go ahead and read, again, like I said before, something that I have not done a public reading of yet. So I'm very curious to see how this goes, as I am sure you guys are. The Whispers of War starts off on the eve of war, and then you get the declaration of war as well during the book. I'm going to read just a little bit before the declaration of war. So this is when Marie and Nora and Hazel have all been talking about their concerns around the war, and there's this sense that something is coming, something is happening, and people are becoming really tense. They know the government is, in the situation where they're being pressured, and Germany is continuing to basically violate agreements and treaties and various things, and put the possibility of war very much in the forefront. So this book starts just at the end of August. War was declared on September 3rd of 1939. This starts just before that, and this is sort of the last days of August that we're going to pick up here. We're going to be in Marie's point of view. This book is told in 3 different points of view, and then there's what's called a framing story around it, with a young woman who is looking back at her grandmother's life and trying to figure out who her grandmother was during the war. So this is Marie's section. This is 1939, last days of August. We'll see how I do with this reading. The scrape of metal chairs against the cheap laminate floor of one of the Royal Imperial University's many teaching rooms pierced Marie's ears as she flicked her notepad closed and stuck her biro through the metal coils at the top. She rocked her head side to side, seeking relief for the tired muscles in her neck and the headache that throbbed against her right temple. She'd been sitting in this room for nearly 6 hours now. Lunch had been brought in by a pair of women pushing metal trolleys laden with sandwiches, but Herr Gunther was bound to march her back to the department offices and plant her in one of the chairs across from his desk to take dictation. With a sigh, she hauled herself to her feet, centering the cloth-covered belt of her light cotton blue dress. Without a glance back at her, Herr Gunther began to make his way out of the symposium room. In the corridor, the stale scent of captive cigarette smoke dissipated, and her headache eased a bit. Tante Mathilde would probably take one look at her and send her right to her room, a cold compress for her forehead, and the lights dimmed low. It would be good to be mothered a bit after a long week. It was nearly 6 o'clock, and the courtyard around Royal Imperial's main campus was built. The courtyard around which Royal Imperial's main campus was built was nearly empty, save for a few undergraduates hurrying through the lightly misting rain with their books tucked under their arms. Most professors and lecturers were already on their way back to their country homes by train or by car. It was not, Marie had learned, fashionable to remain in London for the weekend if one were a serious academic. Far better to sequester oneself in the dimly lit study of a cottage, scribbling away one's next article for publication. Herr Gunther, however, was a different sort of breed. He liked the bustle of London, he told Marie when he'd arrived at the university just over a year ago. Therefore, her boss was wholly unconcerned with keeping her past the hour that most commuters would have left Paddington, Marylebone, and Waterloo. Fraulein Bonn, I wish to dictate my notes from the symposium, Herr Gunther threw over his shoulder as they approached the department offices. Of course, Herr Gunther. And I should like the notes to be typed and on my desk by Monday morning, he said. From inside the department office, a telephone began to ring. Herr Gunther opened the door, and Marie saw that it was the phone on her desk. I'll be just one moment, she said, hurrying around to pick up the receiver. German department? Marie, finally! Hazel's voice came sharp across the line. Hazel, what's the matter? She asked as Herr Gunther unlocked his office and disappeared inside. You don't know? Don't know what? She asked with a frown. I've been trying to ring you for hours. It's happening. Germany marched on Poland. Marie's notepad and notepad and pen spilled from her hands. What? When? Early this morning, the news broke a few hours ago. It was all over the evening newspapers and radio bulletins. You really didn't know? Hazel asked. I have been locked in a room with 10 professors of German language and their graduate students all afternoon, she said, gripping the phone in both of her hands. I haven't been outside. Turn the radio on. The Prime Minister is due to speak any moment. Maybe it isn't an invasion. Maybe it's just the Germans are bombing Polish cities. Troops are marching. There are tanks. Nora said that there can be no doubt that this is the beginning. Hazel paused, and when she next spoke, her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. Marie sank onto the edge of her desk. It was happening. It was actually happening. A part of her had wanted to believe that Hitler wouldn't be so rash as to start another war, but it was impossible to deny that what she could see all around her. People had begun fashioning crude carriers for their gas masks, looping string around the cardboard box they came in. Across the street from her building, workmen had taped long X's on the windows in hopes that it would minimize damage in case of explosion. All around her, Britain was preparing. Nora and I have been calling you all day, Hazel was saying on the other end. Herr Gunther stuck his head out of his office door. Fraulein Bonn. Hazel, I need to go, she said. No, you need your friends. Meet us at the Harlan as soon as you can. It's not our usual Friday, she said. Take a cab, take the bus, walk, just get to the Harlan, said Hazel. Herr Gunther was glaring at her, so she agreed and carefully set the phone down in its carrier. I thought it made clear that there were to be no personal calls in the office, Fraulein Bonn, he said. Marie pushed by him. Fraulein! He could chastise her. She didn't care. She made straight for the small radio sitting on a card table to the right of his desk and switched it on. The radio crackled and came to life. This is the BBC World Service. The time is 6 o'clock, a presenter intoned. What is the meaning of this? Herr Gunther ranged behind her. The presenter continued. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain is due to speak to Parliament after reports of the German invasion of Poland before dawn this morning. Marie turned to see the blood drain from Herr Gunther's face. He knew just as well as she did what all of this meant. Britain had signed a treaty with Poland. Any act of aggression against the country would mean war for Britain. German planes have begun to bomb Polish cities, including Warsaw, the presenter said, in clipped, restrained consonants. That was my friend calling to tell me. We're at war, she said. Not yet, he said, edging away while his eyes locked on the radio as though it was the cause of all of this chaos. Not yet. The British will give Hitler a chance to withdraw. Hitler won't withdraw. You don't know that, Herr Gunther barked so sharply she started. I'm sorry, Fraulein. Please turn that off. She switched the dial off and hovered, not knowing what to do. Herr Gunther, however, began muttering to himself. He pulled his battered leather briefcase onto the desk and began to open his drawers. In went a few papers and a leather-bound notebook. Is there something I can do, Herr Gunther? She asked. Not looking up, he said, Call Emily. Tell her I must cancel dinner. She frowned. I'm sorry, sir. I don't know who Emily is. Herr Gunther froze for a second, his eyes wide, but then again he dropped his attention to his bag. Never mind, never mind. He shut the briefcase then and snapped the locks closed. You may go, Fraulein. I will see you on Monday. Marie walked quickly to her own desk, tossed her notebag into the top drawer, and pulled on her coat. Herr Gunther was still clattering around in his office, but she didn't want to stay to see if he would change his mind, so she jammed her hat on and left. Outside on the street, Marie thought about hailing a cab, but when she turned around to stick her hand out, she caught a glimpse of a headline under the arm of a man waiting to cross the street. Germany invades Poland. Even after so many years, her accent was still unmistakable, and she didn't know what would happen if she approached a cab and asked to be taken to Mayfair. There is a lot more to this chapter, but I do want to make sure that I leave some time for question and answers. So that is just a little bit of a taste of the beginning chapters of The Whispers of War. So again, this book launches on the evening of war, and then war is declared shortly after this passage that I just read, and Marie and her family and her friends all are really plunged into the middle of this very difficult dilemma, this situation where they are going to be asked what is best, not just for their friend, but what's best for the country, what's best for everybody involved in their lives. So it really is I enjoy sometimes playing with sort of complex, very difficult questions with books because I think that it often can lead to some really, really interesting things when it comes to digging into character and seeing how somebody might necessarily react during these really pressured, really difficult times. I find the World War II era is really fascinating for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that it really forces people to show what their true character is, and forces people to be in a situation where they have to either think outside of themselves and act in a way that maybe they would have if they were at peace. But then for some other people, they go a very different, sometimes much darker route, and it can be a very difficult time to try to sort of pull on everybody's goodwill. I think there's not to in any way suggest that everybody was like this, but I think that definitely there was some myth making around World War II, especially here in Britain. The idea that everybody was keep calm and carry on, everybody was pulling together, it was one united nation, and that everybody did the right thing. My book, the Light Over London, and then also this book as well, explores some of what happens when people don't make the right decision and don't do the good thing. And hopefully that makes for some very interesting, sometimes very twisty-turny, different types of things to write about. So I really enjoy it. Again, this is my reading copy, which is why I have this here with me. So this is the hardcover copy, which does have the beautiful, the green dress that everybody always asks me about. I have no idea where this dress comes from, but I would like it as well. And then there's the paperback edition as well, which if you have my copy of the Light Over London, works really, really beautiful with the Light Over London. It's got a similar color scheme, and of course Big Ben is featured in it as well. So this is what you're going to start seeing popping up in stores today, actually, and is also available from Amazon and various online retailers. So I do want to make sure that Justine says she wants the green dress as well. Everybody wants the green dress. So I want to make sure that I've got plenty of time here for comments. So I'm going to go ahead and start answering some of these things that have come up. So I'm just going to go ahead here and so I do. Again, Facebook is really not playing nicely with me here today when it comes to showing me your comments, so I'm going to have to be a bit back and forth between my two screens here, so I do apologize for the awkwardness of watching me flip back and forth, but it is what it is. So Janet, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for popping in and joining. I really hope that your husband has a speedy recovery. It's always really touching to hear that people enjoy books and enjoy books as a bit of an escape even during some difficult times. So hopefully you have something good to read while you're in the waiting room, and I really do wish him the best on his recovery. So okay, I do want to jump in and answer some questions because there are some things here. So Peggy has asked a question. So hello, Peggy. She says, where did you get your research library? Where did you do your research? Was it the library, particular books, or articles? That's a great question. So I have sort of two types of research that I do. One is sort of the research that's constantly going for this time period. So I know that I'm writing books in World War II, so I'm kind of constantly reading about World War II, whether that is about fashion, rationing, things that were going on during the time period, different parts of the war. I will admit I don't write directly about battles and about action, so I tend to be a little weaker on that. And I also, this is pretty shameful for somebody who studied history at university, but I'm not great at dates. So the fact that I could remember the day that the war was declared was a big victory for me. But no, it's I tend to write about what some people would call sort of domestic stories. So I write about the British home front. I write about what was happening here during the war, to men and to women who were here on British soil at the time. So in some cases, that's people who were in military action, and so I will go ahead and look up, what training was like. There are a lot of books that have been written by women who were members of various branches of the armed forces here. So whether that is what their training was like, what their uniforms and their nicknames for things and their handbooks were like. I'll go ahead and sort of sift through some of those personal accounts. I also really find if I'm doing anything with the military, anytime you can get your hands on one of the old original handbooks, and there are some facsimiles that have been produced, including one that I used for The Last Garden in England, which is my book that comes out in January of 2021. They actually reproduced a hand guide for the land girls, and one of my characters is a land girl, so I was able to pull sort of different regulations and different things from that book. So first-hand sources are really, really important. Oral history is also hugely important. So there's a project that was done by the BBC, which is called, I believe, The People's War, and that is an effort to go ahead and have people submit either through writing or through interviews their memories of the war. So you get this huge, huge range of experience. Everybody from little children who remember going to school and kind of doing air raid drills and things like that during their classes, all the way through to people who actually were able to serve, people who were air raid wardens, people who were running shops. You get a huge variety and a huge range of experience with that series. So that's proven to be absolutely invaluable across every World War II related thing that I've ever touched. But this book, what was interesting for researching this, I did do some primary or some secondary source research. So there are some books that I actually mentioned in the author's note here about. I mention about the books being, specifically around internment. There hasn't been as much written about that as you would think. It seems to be a subject where there are a couple of books. One is Collar the Lot, How Britain Interned and Expelled Its Wartime Refugees by Peter and Lenny Gilman. And then the other that there was another one that I sort of glanced at but wasn't as valuable to me, that I go and buy those books if I think that they're going to be really important. But interestingly, the thing that was really, really invaluable for this particular book was something called the Mass Observation Diaries. So let me see if I can find one here. The Whispers of War has interspersed through some of its chapter headings some different things, including headlines, which are all made up by me, and then some things also that are they're basically all headlines, but they're based around. So you can see here, this one is September 3rd, 1939, so the day that the war was declared. But this would have been a morning edition. Churches expect record numbers as Chamberlain's deadline approaches. So Chamberlain basically said, you are going to have September 1st was when Germany invaded Poland. They were going to have until September 3rd, I think 11 a.m. on September 3rd, to withdraw and to commit to withdrawing troops from Poland. Of course, Germany didn't do that, and that launches the war. So that was a headline similar to the headlines I found on that day, on that morning, a headline that I went ahead and wrote for the fictional London Sunday Chronicle. But one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that I was drawing on these different events throughout, and these different headers throughout the course of the book, was to give you a sense of time and also to give you a sense of how public opinion was starting to shift. There are also some different, again, written by me, so made up, opinion articles that I draw on, and some of them are talking about how it's unfair to intern German people, and then slowly as things change and the war changes, and if you know much about 1940 and the spring of 1940, there's a reason why that change starts to happen very rapidly, and those opinion articles start to change their tone, and you see throughout the book that people's attitudes start to change. All of that came from something called the Mass Observation Diaries, where people were asked in this huge sociological experiment that had started before the war, they were asked to go ahead and record their thoughts and feelings about life in Britain. And it started out as really this effort to just capture what it was like in Britain at the time. And it was supposed to be a snapshot of us, a snapshot of Britain. And it coincided with the war. And so you actually get this incredibly valuable, incredibly in-depth idea of what actual people thought. So these people who were recording their thoughts and opinions, they might do it for a week, 2 weeks. Some people did it for the entire war, and then after the war ended into the austerity years. And so you can really see what it was that the average person was thinking about. So it's not just sort of the big picture snapshot that historians sometimes give of, okay, well, this battle was happening and this was going on. And it's actually what somebody in Glasgow or Nottingham or some other village or town or city, people across different industries, what they actually thought during the wars. So that was hugely helpful because again, this is a book that is supposed to ebb and flow. You can tell me if I did a good job with that, but this book is supposed to ebb and flow with public opinion, and so the threat to Marie changes throughout the book depending on where in the war Britain was during that time. So I do quite a lot of research in a lot of different places, but that's sort of an idea of where some of this came from for the Whispers of War. So I want to go ahead and also take a look. Let me see. Justine and Scott both ask about the covers. So Justine says the covers are lovely. Did you get any input? And Scott says, do talk about the change in the book covers. So happy to do that. My publisher is very, very good at giving me very, very good covers. I've been very fortunate, and I've had, I believe, the same cover artist for all 3 of my historical novels. I wish I had The Light Over London and The Last Garden in England to show you. That would have been smart to pull those down, but I don't. So she designed this cover, which again, this is my reading copy. So this is the hardcover of it, and it's just this beautiful, kind of very evocative. If you've read the book, this is very evocative of the mood of the book, which is really wonderful to see. And so I just said, there are 3 friends. I'd love to see 3 women on the cover, but I just know that they're going to do a good job with giving me something great. So I didn't have a huge number of requests other than, these are the hair colors of the 3 women. So this showed up in my inbox, and you can imagine how incredibly happy I was about that. And then sometimes publishers do different things with covers. They look at, sort of what's done well, what are the trends right now. I know, there's a running joke in historical fiction that every book has to have a woman walking away from the camera. I happen to love that cover trope because I think it really kind of epitomizes a lot of these books. They're about change, they're about, decisions and relationships and all these things. So I think it works really well. For the Whispers of War, they wanted something that would look really fantastic with The Light Over London and would look great and appealing to readers. You sort of know what you're going to get with this one. This is a World War II book. It looks like a World War II book. We know it's set in London. We know that's a big driver for people who want to pick the book up. And really, covers are meant to be pieces of marketing. So when you look at a book, if it's doing its job, you should know what that book is going to be about, or at least the genre and the sense of sort of, if it's a thriller, it should be a thrillery cover that's kind of a bit suspenseful or maybe a bit obscured, something that looks like it's really going to be, going to have that puzzle at the center of it. If it's historical fiction, it should look like historical fiction. It should look like the time period that you're talking about. So here you have the women with their hair pulled back, in the sort of clothes of the time. So yeah, this I think works really well. I've been very, very happy with it again. So I hope that you guys do like it, and I'm seeing some very nice questions and comments about the covers. So hopefully you do enjoy it. But yeah, I'm really a fan of this one. So there you go. Anne asks, would I consider writing about other times in British history, such as the Great Fire of London? Absolutely. I am always game for exploring other areas of history. When I was a romance novelist, I wrote about Victorian Britain and specifically London and Edinburgh. I think that there are so many different areas that are just fascinating, and my hope is to have a very long career so that I can continue to write a lot of different books about a lot of different time periods. I've had an absolute blast writing about World War II because I think the research is fascinating. I think the time period is fascinating. I think that there are a lot of stories about women that just have not been told yet, or have not been widely told. So I would love to continue telling stories from women in time periods where, people don't necessarily highlight their contributions or necessarily know that much about what women have done. So, and I think unfortunately that's a lot of history. So it gives me some pretty wide scope. So the Great Fire of London, I'm not so sure. I will admit my that is not one of my strong areas for historical knowledge. But then again, before I started writing about World War II, I could have told you some pretty basic facts and then not a huge amount else. So really every book requires research. So it's just a question of how much previous knowledge do you bring to that research, and what do you need in the way of sort of a head start on that. So who knows? We'll see in the future what ends up happening. So, oh, Susan, I'm glad to hear that you also like the trend of the women walking away from the camera. I think it works. I think the reality is if it didn't work, the books wouldn't sell. So, it's one of those things where people can make fun of it, but I do enjoy it, I will admit. I Let's see what else. Mark here, who I know has read the book, said, did the California connection with Japanese internment during World War II influence your desire to write about German internment during in the UK? The answer is yes. So for those of you who haven't read the book and haven't read the author's note, one of the things that I write about is growing up in Pasadena in California and knowing that very close by, there at Santa Anita Racetrack, that had once been used as an internment camp for Japanese people in California. And so George Takei has very famously written about this because that was actually the place that his family was sent before being sent on to another internment camp. And so I sort of grew up knowing that this was something that had happened, and was something that is a really shameful part of Los Angeles history, California history, and of course U.S. history. And so, when I learned, and I have to admit, I can't remember where I learned that internment had existed here in the UK, both for World War I and World War II. It was highly controversial in World War II because it was hugely expensive. It required a lot of manpower in order to guard those people, and the conditions weren't great, and so there was a lot of sickness that spread through these camps and things like that. So when I found that out, I really became interested in it and decided it was something that, especially because I had talked to various people here, and a lot of them didn't know about internment. People in the US definitely didn't know that people were interned during World War II in the UK. And so I thought it was an interesting jumping off point, and I'm always curious about those parallels between the US and the UK and history, because I think history does have a lot of parallels, and culturally, although we are very different places, the US and the UK shares a lot. And unfortunately, this is one of the more shameful things that the US and the UK share in their history. So that was absolutely a large part of deciding that I wanted to write about that. And then, as often happens, apparently, with writing about World War II, there was a small familial connection that we actually found out. I write about this in the author's note as well. I was standing at a reception for my sister's wedding, sort of greeting guests, and my cousin and I were chatting. And he said that we have a family member who actually was a teacher in one of the internment camps in Arizona. So he was able to find some documentation and find some information. And then through various other family members, I was able to learn a little bit more about her and about some of the things that she'd done writing to Congress to advocate for better camp conditions, sanitary conditions, things like that. So that was a really fascinating familial connection that I just didn't even know existed. And I had a familial connection with the Light Over London as well. So these things apparently keep popping up unexpectedly. But hopefully that was a little tidbit that people enjoyed at the end of the book. So let's see what else we've got here. Do the artists get to read the book before they design the cover? I actually have no idea. I'm really not sure about that. I do know that there is something called a briefing sheet or a cover sheet that sometimes they'll ask me to sort of provide things like what color hair, what personality, any particular clothes that my heroines or my characters in general will wear throughout the book. There's a summary that goes along with it, but I really don't know about reading the entire book. I would be surprised just because of the amount of work that these guys do as part of the art department in publishing houses. It's not just the final cover that you see. There are mock-ups and various things that are tested out to see what the sales team thinks, what the editorial team thinks. I've never received my mock-ups. I suspect because they don't want me to fall in love with one and then get another and be disappointed. But my understanding is that you get different versions of things to see what people think feedback wise will go particularly well for the sale of the book. So I don't know whether they get to read it or not, but I hope if they do, they enjoy the books because it's a lot of books to work on. Lots and lots of books. Justine asks, are there other lesser known stories that you'd like to dig into in a book? There are so many. One of the big problems that I have in the course of doing research is that I just come across really cool stuff all the time that I think is really, really interesting. And unfortunately, not all of it's going to make it into a book. And sometimes my editor will actually say to me, like, I think we need to tone things down a little bit and pull back on the research. And I can tell that's just because I found interesting stuff I just want to put into the book and I think is kind of cool. So with that, I try to keep a bit of a mental log and also a written log of things that I think would make really interesting stories, books that I eventually would like to write. There have been some instances where I've pitched new books to my publisher, and it's been sort of like, here are 3 or 4 pitches. We pick the one pitch. They pick the one pitch that they think is really commercially viable because this is a business and this is a livelihood for me. And we want the book to sell well, and we want readers to be excited about the book. So we want to make sure that that works. In our favor, but it means that I have all these other pitches of things that I would love to read more about and love to write more about. So yes, I definitely have other stories brewing in the back of my head. Again, I'm hoping for a very long, very storied career so that I can write all of these books at some point. That would make me incredibly happy. So hopefully, fingers crossed, one day I'll be able to get to some of these other books as well. But I'm already writing my 2022 book, which may seem like a really, really long time from now. But again, when I said in the introduction to this that, there's a lot of time that happens between the actual writing of the book and then when the book comes out, and then again when the book comes out in paperback, because there's always a gap between hardcover and paperback. Again, it's just one of those things where you're always working a bit ahead and always thinking a bit ahead. So let me go ahead and just do a quick check here again. This has been great with so many questions coming through. I really appreciate it, you guys. I think it's always fun getting to talk to you because it's, when you're a writer, you sit there and you get to write and you get to do the different things that come along with that. But it's always more fun to talk to readers. Being completely honest, I really enjoy it. So. Let's see. Ooh, Susan. Okay. What are you reading right now and what are you looking forward to reading? So, good question. I am reading a book called The Kew Gardens Girls by Posey Lovell, which is a book that is coming out in the US next year, I believe in the spring. So I'm really looking forward to that. One of the perks of being an author is that I get to do a little bit of preview of books, and that's been a really fun one, and I'm in the middle of it right now. Unfortunately, I'm writing so much, I'm not getting nearly as much time as I would like to read, but it's the kind of the hazards of the job. So that one is really cool. It's about World War One, which is an area, again, I haven't written about, but I've read some absolutely fantastic books I've really enjoyed in that. I'm doing a reread of a Nora Roberts book called Montana Sky, which is an old favorite. It's an interesting experience rereading it because obviously I've changed, the world's changed, things have changed a lot in the sort of 10 to 15 years since I last read it. There's some language I'm not so comfortable with anymore in the book, which I think is a good caveat to anybody who wants to read it. But it's really a fantastic romantic suspense, lots of thriller elements. If you're into murder shows with people who do really bad things to each other, but you also like romance, I guess that's it's the closest pitch I can give for it. But I've got a couple of family members reading it along with me right now, which has been a lot of fun. And then also I'm doing some research reading at the moment as well. So if I turned my camera here, you guys wouldn't be able to see it because it's not lit properly, but you'd see a whole shelf of books that need to be read, that are just crying out to be read, and unfortunately I just haven't gotten to yet. So I think when I do end up finishing up this book, I am going to just absolutely dive into binge reading books. And my family sort of knows that they're just going to lose me for a little bit after I turn a book in, because first of all, I'm really tired, and second of all I want to do is read and read and read. So that is what I plan on doing probably in December. I'm aiming to turn the book in early December, so I'm hoping that I can have some fun free time before Christmas. Um, and yeah, I think that's probably, without going into my Goodreads, that's probably all that I have on my plate right now. But I will admit, I like to think of myself as being the type of person who reads one book at a time. My mother has very strong feelings about that, whereas the rest of my family feels very strongly that you should be able to read as many books as you want, and they're going to be laughing at me right now when they see this. But I unfortunately have switched over to their way of thinking, sort of inadvertently, just because there's so much to read and so much that I'm doing with research at the same time. So let's see. We got it's 5:45 here, which means it's about 12:45 for people on the East Coast, which is always, since I lived in New York, my barometer. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and start talking about this giveaway that I've got. So, what I'm doing for the Whispers of War is I'm going to give away 2 copies of this book. They're both going to be signed. They're going to go to 2 different people who have commented, asked questions, anything like that on this Facebook Live, because I do want to make sure that you guys are getting to actually read this book if you haven't read it, or if you have read it and you want a signed edition of it. I, unfortunately, with the pandemic and with living in the UK, have not been able to do much in the way of signed books. So this is an opportunity to win a signed book. So please, if you are interested, go ahead and send a comment. Again, it can be anything from letting me know, what it is that you're reading, or a specific question about the Whispers of War, or writing historical fiction, anything like that. I'm going to be popping in over the next few days and making sure that I'm answering any of those questions I haven't gotten to yet. Again, not everybody can watch live, not everybody can sit there through the entire thing, so I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to go back and take a look. But 2 copies of this are going to be going out to lucky readers who have commented, and I will be sure to sign them and send them along to you as well. I also wanted to let you know that this event is part of a larger Facebook group that I have. I've been doing events since June, and I decided it was time to put everything all together in one place into a Facebook group that is called Ask an Author with Julia Kelly. You can go ahead and search for that in Facebook, or it's actually the event, one of the event hosts, and you can go ahead and request to join that Facebook group. If you do that, what it's going to do is allow you to not only stay in touch about various events that are going on, including some very special guests that I have coming up. I'm getting things lined up for the end of the year, and then also taking a look at the beginning of the year. But also, there's a really nice community of readers in there. People are already starting to talk about what it is that they are reading, asking for book recommendations, all sorts of things. I saw a little bit of sort of 2021 goal setting in there for reading, which was really cool. So somebody was saying that they want to read a little bit more widely across genres, and also talking about their goal of reading a book a week. So 52 books in the year, which will probably sadly beat me this year. I'm very, very sad about the fact that I'm so far behind on my reading, but that's really exciting because this group is very new. This is the first event that's been hosted through it, but coming up in October, one of the most requested authors that I get for, to talk about her books, and then also requests when I ask about who would you guys want to see as a live guest is Kristen Harmel, who just hit the New York Times bestseller list with the Book of Lost Names. She's also the author of The Room on Rue Amelie and also The Winemaker's Wife. So she writes about World War II as well. She writes in France, which is very, very interesting and really a fascinating time. So Kristen's actually going to be joining me on the 8th of October. If you go into the Ask an Author group, you will find on the sidebar there should be an events page. You can go in and take a look and RSVP to that event to make sure that you don't miss it, and then you'll get the notifications when the events come up. Kristen's going to be not only speaking to me about her books, and I'll ask her some questions. Mostly what we want to do is talk to you guys and get, just like we did here, questions from you for Kristen. This is your chance to chat with her to your heart's content, tell her how much you love her books, and then also ask her lots of questions about those books and about writing and all of that stuff. So I'm really, really thrilled for that one. I think it's going to be so much fun. I think Kristen, I've already done a couple of panels and things like that with Kristen, and she's an absolutely lovely person. Really, really interesting to talk to her. So I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you guys are looking forward to that as well. So that is coming up, and then I will also be announcing a November and a December guest. We'll go ahead and do a few of these through the end of the year, see how you like them, see who you want to see come up in 2021. My goal is to get authors that you guys really want to talk to and you guys really want to ask questions about, because the point of the group is that you're supposed to be able to ask an author. It's a live Q&A and you can go through, and also I'm sure we'll do some giveaways and stuff like that. So that is a great place to go ahead and sign up and let me know what it is that you are enjoying reading right now. You can also follow me on my Facebook page, which you can just search for Julia Kelly Writes on Facebook and it will pop up. But mostly I just want to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Again, you know, The Whispers of War is now in stores, and I'm really, really excited for this book. Really excited for it to get into even more readers' hands and for you guys to experience the story of Marie, Nora, and Hazel. I hope you enjoy it, and keep commenting. I will be drawing names in a couple of days for the book giveaway, but otherwise, happy reading, and enjoy the rest of your week.